Okay, so the first video that I thought we would try would be something to do with fractions and decimals, because I know for a fact that my class, that is something that we've been focusing on lately. So I'm going to be looking at equivalent fractions with you. I'm going to be looking at adding and subtracting fractions, and we might go into a little bit of how to convert fractions to decimals as well. So let's see how that goes. Okay, so first thing we are going to look at equivalent fractions. I've got my iPad here, which will be up on the screen also. It should come up now. And you're going to be able to see exactly what I'm doing whilst we're talking about it. So first of all, we've got equivalent fractions. Now, equivalent fractions, first off, we've got to look at what our fraction is. So, for example, if we have got 1/3, we have first got our top one, which is our numerator. So our numerator is our top number, that's one that we're going to focus on. The one on the bottom is called our denominator. Now, these are going to become important because I'm going to be talking about them the whole time that we're doing equivalent fractions. So, when I'm talking about equivalent fractions, I'm talking about fractions that mean exactly the same thing. So no matter what it is, it will always be the same. For example, if I have a pizza, and if I split that pizza into two, I can say I have got 1/2 on this side, and I've got 1/2 on that side. Now, if I took another pizza, and I split it into 4, I then have 1/4 for each of those pieces. Now, when I'm looking at my equivalent fractions, I can see if I look, I'm just going to get another colour so that we can show it nice and easy. Let's go for a red. I have got here 1/2. Now if I look at my pizza, making sure that they're equal sizes, if I look at my other pizza, I can quite as easily see here, this is exactly the same shape and size as the other one. So I could turn around and I could say, let's go for a nice blue this time, I could say that 1/2, this half here, is equal to 1/2 of my quarters, because I've got 1/4 and I've got 2/4. So 1/2 is the same as 2/4. Now, if we take a look at the actual numbers, so I'm going to draw them a bit bigger here, 1/2 equals 2/4. I can look and I can see what is happening with those numbers. So if I look at my numerator, that's my top number, this first one, I've got the number 1. If I look at the numerator on the other side, I have got the number 2. Now, each of these have to go through a process to make it equivalent. If I look at these numbers, I can see what I have done is I have timesed the numerator by 2. 1 times by our 2 gives us 2. Now with equivalent fractions, we have to do exactly the same for our denominator. So I'm going to go to my bottom number, my denominator, the number 2, and I'm going to draw my little arrow, times it by 2, which does give us 4. If I do 2 times by 2, it gives us 4. So to find an equivalent fraction, what you can do is you can just times the number by the same number on the numerator and on the denominator. Either way, it shouldn't make a difference. Now, some questions will ask you something a little bit different. It will ask you to do, let's put an example, whoops, accidentally did a squiggle there. Let's give an example of, it might give you let's say 6/9 equals, and it's going the opposite way this time, so the equals is before it, and it might have a 3 as our denominator, and it might leave you a blank part on the top. This is where we can use that knowledge of what we have to do with our numerator and our denominator to help us. So I'm not going to look at my numerators because that's where I've got my blank. I don't need to look at that one because it's not going to help me in any way. So I'm going to look at the one that has got both. That is our denominator. I have got a 3 and I've got a 9. Now I'm going to switch to another colour for this one because I think it might make things a little bit easier to see. Let's go for a green. So I've got my 3 and I've got my 9. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see how much we times 3 by to get to 9. So if I'm not too sure of that with my times tables, I can count it on my fingers. I'm a big fan of doing that because I think even when you're an adult or a bit older, it's still something that comes in handy. So I'm going to go 3, 6, 9, and I'm going to see that I need 3 things to times together by. So 3 times 3 equals 9. Now, as I said before, whatever happens to our denominator must happen to our numerators as well. So this top number, something needs to times by 3 to get to 6. Now I know my times tables, so I know how that works, but what I can do instead, if I don't understand it, if I don't know my times tables for it, or if it's a larger number, what I can do is I can work backwards. I can divide it by 3 instead. So I can jump back the other way and I can divide 6 by 3. So 6 divided by 3, I'm going to count up in 3s until I get to 6. 3, 6. That gives me 2, which means 2 is my numerator for that number. So that's it for equivalent fractions. If there's anything else that you feel you would like to work on with that, feel free, pop a question down in the comments below and I'll be able to hopefully address that, do another little video that might be able to help with something. But now what we're going to do is we are going to move on and we're going to instead focus on, sorry about that, we are going to focus on adding and subtracting fractions. So with this one, it's actually fairly simple when you get the hang of it. So first off, I'm going to choose a couple of fractions. I will do 2/4 add 1/4. And I'm going to put my little equals there. So this is where it gets a little bit easier in a way, because all we're doing is we're adding, which I'm sure we all know how to do that. So when I'm adding and subtracting fractions, I do not need to look at my denominator. I don't need to add those at all. The denominator always, the denominator always stays the same. So I don't have to worry about a denominator. So first thing that I can do, if my denominators are exactly the same, which they are, they're both 4, I can already go and write my 4 in my answer. So I'll do my line for my fraction and I will put my 4 underneath. Next thing that I need to do is look at my numerator. And with my numerator, I have got 2 and 1. So all I do is add my 2 and my 1 together, and then that gives me 3. So I have 3/4 as my answer. Some questions are going to ask you ones that end up with mixed numbers. Now, mixed numbers are actually really simple. All they are is when you have got a fraction that includes a whole number and a fraction. For example, 1 and 2/8. That's an example of a fraction, of a mixed number, sorry. So sometimes they'll ask you to do mixed numbers, sometimes they'll ask you to do an improper fraction. An improper fraction is one where it doesn't use those mixed numbers. So if I had 1 and 2/8, what that will be instead So 1 and 2/8 will equal, I've got one whole lot of 8s, so if I have got my 8s here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, I've got one lot of 8s, so I would colour each of those 8s in. That also equals 8 8s, and I've got 7, 8. I've got 2 lots of my 8s shaded in, which means total I have got 8, 9, 10 8s. Some questions will ask you for improper fractions and some questions will ask you for mixed numbers. Now it's easier to do improper fractions if you are just adding them together to begin with. Mixed numbers is that extra step up to see if you can convert them. So let's have a look at one using an improper fraction, and then we'll see if we can convert that into a mixed number as well. So first off, I am going to have, let's do 7/9 add 4/9. That's going to give me an improper fraction. So first thing, do not touch that denominator. It stays the same. Because both of them are 9, we do not have to change it. So I'm going to put my 9 at the bottom already. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do 7 add 4. So again, I can count up on my fingers if I can't do it in my head or if I just need that extra bit. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have got 11/9. That is my improper fraction. The numerator is bigger than the denominator. Now what I'm going to have a go at doing is I'm going to have a go at exchanging 11/9 into a whole number and a fraction, into our mixed numbers. So first thing that I'm going to do to help me out, I need to draw a bar. Now my bar model is going to have 9 parts in it because my denominator is 9, so I'm going to split it into 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Now I can't make 11 out of 9 because I've only got 9. So what I need to do is I need to add another bar of 9. So I'm going to do that now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, just checking. Always make sure you check, otherwise you might have drawn it in wrong and then you might get the wrong answer by accident. So I'm going to colour in all of these until I get to the right number. Let's go for a pink. I like colour pink. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I stop at 11 because 11 was my numerator. Now what I can do is I can see how many whole bars I have filled out. Well, if I look here, I can see I have got 1 whole bar filled out. So that will be a whole number of 1. I then look and see how many parts of another bar I have filled out. I can see I have got 2 of my 9 filled out. That means my number is 1 and 2/9. Now, subtracting fractions is very much the same as adding fractions. So what we're going to do is we are going to have a look at subtracting our fractions now. So if I had the number 11/9, let's take that same one, and I was taking away 6/9. Again, those denominators are exactly the same. So I'm going to keep the denominator the same. I've then got 11 take away 6. Those are my numerators, so I'm going to find out the numerator. 11 take away 6. I'm going to use my fingers to help me with this. So I have 11 in my head. I'm going to put 6 on my fingers so that I can count down. So 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So on my numerator, I'm going to write 5. My answer then would be 5/9. Let's try it where we have got a mixed number in our question. I have got 1 and 2/3 take away, let's go for, let's go for 4/3. Ooh, I'm gonna be a bit tricky then. I'm gonna have a mixed number and an improper fraction. So to work this out, I could do it one of two ways. I could either convert all of them into mixed numbers, or I could convert all of them into improper fractions. I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to transform all of them into improper fractions, because we haven't done that one yet. So I'm going to take my 1 and 2/3 and I'm going to try to make that into an improper fraction. So to do that, I'm going to draw out my bars again to help me. Now this time my bars are all going to have 3 in them, because 3 is my denominator. So let's get my bar, 1, 2, 3. Now I know I'm going to have at least 2 bars, because I know I've got 1 whole. Let's grab, sorry about that, my camera ran out of battery. It has gone back on now, and hopefully we can carry on. I am going to do this basically after I've already recorded what's on the screen, so if it doesn't quite match up with what I am writing, I'm sorry, but it shouldn't take too long. So I was saying before I had 1 and 2/3, and that I was going to convert it into a mixed number. So what I was doing is I was drawing out my bars. I know I'm going to have at least 2 because I've got 1 whole. So I'm going to draw out my bars, draw out 2 of them, make sure they have got 3 parts in each of them. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to make sure that I draw out 1 whole. So I'm going to colour 1 whole bar in, so that's 1, 2 and 3. And then I'm going to look over to the fraction part of my mixed number. I have got 2/3 there. So what I'm going to do is in my bar of 3, I'm going to colour 2 of those, because I've got 2/3. So I colour those 2 in, and now I can see how many I've got. I need to count up the number that I have shaded in. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can then go and put that as my improper fraction, which is 5/3. What I can then go and do is I can go back to my question, and I can write that next to it just to clarify it. So I now have 5/3 take away 4/3, which equals our 1/3. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there, because I'm aware this video has gone on for quite a while already. I will go on to our next topic in my next video. But thank you for listening. If there is anything at all that you are confused about, or any topics you want me to focus on, get a parent or carer to sign up to YouTube, get an account, and they can comment down below with anything that they want to say, be it video ideas, anything that you find that you're struggling on, any topics you think that I would be able to help you with, or if there is anything that I need to clarify in the video that I have just done. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!